If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and another tutorial. Today I'm going to sew along with you the Blanche bowler bag by Swoon. Now I have modified this one to be a bound finish, as drop-in linings are my kryptonite. So I show you in this video how I modify the pattern to make it so we can finish this with binding, and it went together very smoothly. Let me show you some of the features of this bag. So this one I have done in faux leathers and a cotton mane. These fabrics and vinyls are what I picked up on my Indonesia trip back in December of 2022. They just went so well together and made this bag so beautiful. It has an optional crossbody strap. It's got two side pockets. It has optional piping. I've done a 2 zipper closure, purse feet on the bottom. And then on the inside, I did my usual linings, as I always do my linings the same way. I'm not sure if you can see that there, my decorative overlay over my zipper pocket and my decorative slip pocket. I got 2 slip pockets in there. And then I just had a quilter's cotton from Fabricland for my lining, a solid color. I use bias tape binding, which is my preferred way of binding a bag. In this tutorial, I do not show you how to do the binding because everybody uses different type of binding method when it comes to finishing a bound bag, but I do have how I do my bias tape binding down below in the description of this video in the Bagmakers Basics playlist, so you can always click on that and see how I do that. Challenges I had with this bag. The only challenge I had was actually this piping right here, and it was mainly my fault. I actually broke my very first needle on an industrial machine, but that is only because this vinyl that I got from Indonesia is very, very thick. It's almost like leather weight. It's beautiful, but I got through it. So yeah, I did the vinyl piping on this, and that just made the layers, especially down here where the overlay and the bottom meets, a little bit thick. I would recommend, if you are going to do vinyl piping like I did, even on an industrial machine, make sure you use a thinner piping. You can also leave that piping off altogether. I'm going to be making a small one next, and I don't think I'm going to be doing the piping. I'll just be doing the piping along the pocket here. But yeah, still got through it, still turned out perfect, still looks great, but man, I was cursing myself for choosing to do piping with this vinyl. And besides that, it actually comes together really fast. The way we do it in a bound method is almost like a partial pouch construction. You'll see what I mean when we get further into it. Okay, stuff in this bag. All of my hardware is from Emmaline bags. My zippers and zipper tape. My zipper pulls and zipper tape are from Blue Cala. Again, my batik fabric and this vinyl I picked up when I was down in Indonesia, so they don't ship to Canada or the US. My interfacing in this bag, I have some Decovil heavy in the bottom, which I get from Emmaline bags. My main stabilizer is Pretty and Pink Foamm from Galaxy Kustoms. It's similar to Soft and Stable or Pillow and Flex Foam, what have you. All my cotton pieces I have backed with EBFuse Light, which is similar to a medium woven interfacing such as SF101 or Woven Fuse or what have you. I get that from Emmaline bags as well. What else? I really do think that is it. I use, again, my double-sided tape. You know, I have an absolute love affair double-sided tape. I get that from Galaxy Kustoms as well. Anyway, and then of course my piping, or not my piping, my binding I bought from Fabricland. I buy the extra wide bias tape from there. So glad I got the extra wide for when it came to binding this one with the piping. Anyways, it's completely domestic machine friendly. Again, every pattern is domestic machine friendly. Just choose textiles that you know your machine can handle. I definitely wouldn't have used this vinyl on my GK 2010Q. I would have been crying a lot. Anyways, how about we get to making this bag? So you're going to need some number 5 zipper tape, some binding, 2 swivel clasps, 2 D-rings, a slider, 4 rectangular rings, 4 strap ends, 3 zipper pulls, 6 purse feet, your nameplate, rivets, piping if you're doing piping, Giardini base coat color and protecting gloss if you are edge coating, some foam, 4 zip tabs cut 4 at 2 times 1.5 inch, your slip pocket piece, your side panels, exterior and linings, your side pocket panels, exteriors and linings, your zipper pocket lining pieces. And these are the measurements that I made 1/8 of an inch smaller than the pattern to accommodate for the binding, to exterior, to lining. Bottom piece, exterior and lining, and on the bottom piece I've already put Decovil heavy outside the seam allowances, your 2 overlay pieces, and of these are my lining pocket pieces that I like to put in. And if you're going to be doing a raw edge strap connectors like me, you need to cut 4 of those and then have a big piece that would accommodate all 4. 2 connector pieces, or side connector pieces. Your piping vinyl, if you are making vinyl piping like me, 2 handle pieces. Your crossbody strap. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make my piping, my handles, and my crossbody strap off camera. If you need classes on how to do those are down below in the description. Okay, so this is how I do my raw edge strap connectors. So I just took the pattern piece that said woven and used that as my guide. On the back of the 4 I cut out, I'm putting a little bit of double-sided tape outside of seam allowances where we will be stitching these on, and putting them on that scrap piece, wrong sides together like this, and we are going to go ahead and go around all sides except for that short straight edge. You can go 1/8 of an inch there, and all other sides you are going to go around it with a nice top stitch of a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, now that that's done, what you're going to do is you're going to cut them off like this, and then you're going to go like a scant 1/8 of an inch, as close as you can to those stitches that we just made. And what we're trying to do is make this just slightly smaller than 1 inch, right where our rectangular ring is going to go on, because as we put edge paint on this, it is going to make it a little bit bigger on all sides. So it should be just like 7/8 of an inch here, which mine are, and you're going to cut the other ones like that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to edge paint all of these pieces, my connectors, my lining decorative accents, and my overlays just along the curvy side here with 3 base coats, 1 color, and 1 protecting gloss. Okay, so I'm also adding 6 purse feet to this large Blanche bag. So I am measuring in 2 inches from the left side of my bottom panel and 1.5 inches up from the long side there. And I'm going to make 6 marks here. So these middle ones I'm lining up with my center lines and then doing the same on the other side. And now go ahead and I will install my purse feet in these places. If you do need a class on how to do that, that is down below in the description. While I'm here, before putting on those purse feet, I'm also going to go ahead and mark my 4 centers on my long sides and my short sides, as that's going to come in handy later on when we put on our side panels. Once I have my purse feet installed, I like to take some Gorilla Tape or duct tape and put it over the prongs just for extra stability and security. Okay, so I'm going to take all of my exterior pieces, my 2 side panels, my main panels, and my bottom piece, and I'm going to attach them to foam. I'm going to base them on with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Now, why we did it with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance is because we're doing this bound, we really want to reduce that bulk that's going to be in the seams. So because we have 1/2 inch seam allowance, we can go ahead base these with a 1/4 of an inch. And then what I'm doing is I'm just kind of pulling the foam away and cutting it away like as close as I possibly can to that base stitch like so. So you can see, making sure I'm not cutting my exterior, but that's just going to help reduce that bulk. All right, so I've gone ahead and I have already marked my top and bottom centers of my main panel. I marked the bottom center of my overlay piece, and I'm just going to put a little bit of double-sided tape here. Make sure it's outside of your seam allowances where we'll be top stitching. We're going to line up that bottom middle like so and secure with clips along that bottom. Then I'm going to pull away the backing of the double-sided tape and then let it just kind of fall on top of that main panel. And the reason I use the double-sided tape here is just to make sure that that overlay is not going to shift while we top stitch this. What we do is we want to take this to the machine and top stitch along this curvy side and baste the other 3 raw edges. So once both of the main panels are done, we can prep our connectors. So from that short straight edge, I'm going to measure down 1 1/4 inches and draw a line. And then I'm going to take just a little bit of double-sided tape and put it along the top of that short side of the connector. And then I'm going to take a rectangular ring, bring it down to that line, and fold the connector in behind itself like so, securing that with the tape. Add another small piece of tape outside of where our top stitching will be. And from that fold where it goes over the rectangular ring, we're going to measure down a 1/2 inch for a guide for when we go to sew this onto our main panel. Okay, so now we want to measure, I believe it was a 2 3/4 of an inch in from the center. I'm using 3 3/4 here because I'm going to just use my ruler for that 1 inch mark. So making sure it's 2 3/4 from that side there. And this is also 2 1/2 inches down, I believe. Double check those measurements because they do change whether you're doing small or the large Blanche. Make sure they're both very centered. And then along that 1 inch line we drew, I'm going to take my connector, take the tape off, and line it up just like this along that little line where the fold is, where our rectangular ring folds over. And then I'm going to go 1/8 of an inch away from the top stitching we did when we made the connectors, across that line we drew and around. So what I like to do is pull my threads long because I don't want to have any back stitching showing on these connectors. So I'm holding my threads long, starting my stitching, and you're going to see me do a lot of hand cranking here because I want to have this mirror that other 1/8 of an inch top stitch as close as we possibly can so we have a nice uniform look. I'm right now pulling my top thread through and then continuing on. When I get to that line we drew, I'm going to go across there. Make sure your needle is down before you pivot. And then grab a scrap of vinyl or what have you and put it in behind your walking foot so it doesn't eat up your vinyl or your hardware. And then as I come to the beginning, I'm going to make sure that my needle lands in the same hole it started. Hold on to my thread so I know which one is my bobbin thread. Flip it over, yank up my bobbin thread to pull that top thread through, and then tie those 4 strands off. And this just makes it so you don't have a buildup of thread from back stitching. I like to tie it with 3 or 4 knots, just like so. And here's it from the other angle so you can see what I'm doing. So this is our bottoms and our main panels done. I went ahead and put my rivets in, and you can see I have backed them with small scraps of Decovil Heavy in the back just to strengthen them. And I thought this was a great place for my nameplate. So go ahead and put the main panels and the bottom panel aside for now. Now I already went ahead and I did my slip pocket and my zipper pocket. If you need a class for that, I do have that down in the playlist below. Just make sure you're sealing up your zipper pocket. Now we're going to work on our zipper panel. This is different than the pattern because we are doing this as a binding modification. So I cut my zipper for the large to 12.5 inches. I'm taking my 2 zipper tabs, putting them right sides together and sandwiching that zipper tape in between those. And I'm going to go ahead and stitch along that line with a 1/4 inch seam allowance for both ends. Go ahead and press those zipper tabs wrong sides together, take them to the iron, give it a quick steam, and then top stitch right through the zipper tabs on both sides. Okay, so now that that's done, you just want to trim those zipper tabs so they're the same width as our zipper tape. And then you're going to fold this in half and mark with an erasable pen the center of our zipper tape. What we're going to do is almost similar to what we do with a pouch. So I'm taking my slip pocket lining piece. You can use clips here instead of double-sided tape. Use what your machine can handle. I have my lining piece right side up, putting the tape along the top. I have my zipper right side up as well. I'm lining up my center marks and sticking my tape down. You can go ahead and you can base this in place if you like. I'm going to skip that step and I'm just going to add my exterior. Now our zipper tabs are going to look like they're a little longer. That's okay as long as it's centered. Take your exterior front piece and you can either clip this or use the double-sided tape like me again. And put this right sides together with that lining and zipper that we already prepped. Match up that center. Make sure it's nice and even and lining up all the way along that top. And it's very important that we get a good seam allowance here of 3/8 of an inch seam allowance across here. So in order to get that, I strongly suggest putting on your right zipper foot. It just helps get nice and close to those zipper teeth, and we really need that seam allowance to be accurate so our side panels will fit into this when we go to prepare it for binding. Now that that's done, we want to press these 2 panels wrong sides together, nice and tight away from those zipper teeth. So if you can take it to your iron, go ahead and do that. I once again love my double-sided tape, so I'm going to use that as my pressing agent. And I'm going to press the exterior nice and taut away from my zipper teeth. And you can see how nice and straight my zipper is because I used that zipper foot. I'm going to do the same on the lining side. Again, you can press this if you're not using something that will melt. And press this nice and tight away from those zipper teeth, like so. And then we're going to go ahead and take all of this to the machine, and we are going to top stitch right under the zipper there through the main panel, catching both the lining and the main panel.
And repeat the exact same thing with the other side of our zipper tape with your back exterior and back lining pieces. We have something that looks like this. So you can go ahead and you can trim up your zipper tabs so they're even with the rest of it. Now we kind of want to pull our exteriors together and our linings together, exactly like when you put a pouch together. And we're going to attach our bottom. So let's start with our exterior, matching up the long straight edges centers with one of the main panels. And then what we're going to do is we are going to sew across here with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, making sure that your lining panels are up and out of the way and you're not accidentally sewing through those. Now what we want to do is we want the seam to be pointing towards the bottom like so, and we're going to top stitch through the bottom panel to hold that seam in place. So that's done. It looks lovely. The seam is going the right way. Now we're going to bring the other exterior main panel, line up those centers, and sew across there with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, now sewing this seam in place is a little bit trickier. Again, you want it to be pointing towards the bottom panel like we have here, but we're going to have to top stitch it in a loop type thing. It's okay. I'm going to show you both views here. I hope that this camera view is good. Tell me if you like it so you can see it, how I do it from both angles. So I have it in a loop. I'm just holding the panel kind of out of the way, top stitching through that bottom panel and kind of squishing everything and moving it so I can sew all the way through like this, being careful not to catch that other main panel. Just take it nice and slow. It feels a little awkward at first, but really it is easy and it's got a big enough opening that it's not too cumbersome. So you should have no issues with this. Okay, so we have a loop here. Our top stitching looks great. Now we're going to do the exact same thing with the lining panels. Make sure your zipper is open. Sew the bottom on, but do not worry about the top stitching for the lining. We do not need to worry about that for the lining. Okay, so now we got like this figure 8 type thing going on. So now you're going to kind of pull it through the sides like this and bring the lining and the exterior panels wrong sides together. So you're making the 2 tubes into 1 tube. And go ahead and use some clips to match up the bottom seams. And then what we're going to do is we are going to baste all the way around this with a 1/4 inch seam allowance to make it all one piece. But make sure that your side or your bottom panels, right where those seams are, match up good. I am going to nest them to help reduce some of that bulk because we have the exterior panels pointing towards the middle. So I'm going to press my lining ones the opposite way and nest them together just to help you to reduce that bulk, and you'll do the same with the opposite side. There we go. This is what that looks like. You can go ahead and put this aside for now. All right, now we're going to work on our crossbody connectors. So you can use clips. I'm going to use some double-sided tape here. And I am going to fold the long edges of the connectors pieces into a center middle line of 1 inch, like so. And then I'm going to take another piece of double-sided tape, and I'm going to put it about 3/4 of an inch up from one of the short ends, like so. Take your D-ring, and you're going to fold down about 1 1/4 inches or 1 1/2 inches-ish down, and then fold the bottom part up. And that encloses the raw edges, and on the back, put a small piece of double-sided tape again. Take your side panels, find your top and bottom centers, then use your pattern to figure out what measurements you need to put this down nice and centered. So I'm doing the large one, so I'm putting it down 2 1/2 inches nice and center, and I'm drawing a 1 inch line where I can go ahead and I can line up. My center's not quite right, I can tell because I fussy cutted these sides. That's better. And then just like we did with the rectangular rings, we're going to draw a line, but we're going to draw a line 1 inch down. And then we're going to go ahead and stick these on the sides right along that line that we drew, like so. And then we're going to top stitch around here across that line and back down again. I'm going to do that trick again of holding my threads long and pulling my threads to the back to tie off so I don't have that build up a thread. You're more than welcome to backstitch as well. I thought I'd do another angle again just to show you what it looks like from the needle side here, putting that into place. Okay, so those are in place. I've put 2 rivets on each to hold them in place. Now you're going to take the lining pieces and put them, find your top and bottom centers and put them wrong sides together with the main exterior pieces and clip them in place. And then you're going to go ahead and you're going to baste these together with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance for both sides. Okay, so that is all done. You can see they're one piece. Now what we want to do is we want to find our centers of these. So we've already done our top and bottom centers. So if you bring your top and bottom centers up together, you will find your side quarter sections like so. And we will need that for when we go to attach this, when we prepare for binding. So do small clips there. And now we're going to work on our piping. Now to do this, I would do the piping on this part, but I don't think I do the piping all the way around like we're going to do later on. Again, it got really thick, at least not in vinyl piping. But what we want to do is find the center of our smaller piping piece, line it up with the center top of our side pocket piece. And then we want to cut these up so they follow the same line as our pocket piece. And we want to measure in 5/8 of an inch and mark it with an erasable pen. And the reason we're doing that is we want to make sure that there's no cording in there because we need to reduce as much bulk as we can when we go to bind this. So I'm pulling my threading out from when I made my piping, taking it off the piece, and I'm going to cut away an inch of my cording. You could do this with pre-made as well, just kind of pull out those basting stitches and cut off some of that cording, but you want to still keep the fabric on the outside intact. So again, pull it apart and cut away 5/8 of an inch of that cording inside, and then put it back together, put it back centered on top like so. So the raw edge of the piping and the top raw edge of the side pocket are nice and even. And we're going to go ahead and baste that with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Again, I'm using my right zipper foot, and for the size of the piping that I cut, it will have exactly a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'm just running my zipper foot nice and tight against my piping cording, as I do not have a piping foot for my machine just yet. And you'll do the same with the other side. All right, so you can see how pretty that is going to look. So now we're going to take our lining pieces and we're going to do our top and bottom centers once again. And then we're going to put this right sides together with those main panels, and this is going to be sandwiching that piping in between. Clip it in place. And then you're going to take this to the machine and you are going to sew them together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance and just following the line that we sewn before. Okay, now we want to pull these panels wrong sides together like so, and you're going to see how nice that piping looks along the top. I'm going to clip down the edges into place, making sure everything is even. You're going to see I cut my lining pieces a little bit too big, and I will just trim them off if need be. Make sure everything is nice and tight. I'm going to go ahead and trim off my excess. That was just bad cutting on my part. And then what we want to do is we want to top stitch along that seam right where our piping is, right underneath the piping through the pocket panels here, and then baste the raw edges together. Now that that's done, go ahead and trim the piping up again so it follows the line of this pocket. Grab your side panels. And then what we want to do is we want to line up that bottom center and clip these in place. And then we're going to go ahead and we are going to baste these to our side panels. You can go ahead and you can baste these with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now it's time to do our piping. Again, I don't know if I would do piping along these edges again, but it did turn out really beautiful in this bag, but doing vinyl piping was a little much. So on the end, one of the ends of my piping piece, I'm going to once again cut away about 5/8 of an inch or so of the piping cording inside. And why we're doing that is on each end of this, we're going to be veering this piping out of the seam allowances along the bottom of our side panels. So we'll start with the one side, line up the raw edges, and at that 1 inch mark that I had marked on the outside, I'm going to line that up with the center bottom of the side piece for now, because we will be veering it down right at that point. Go ahead and clip around. As I'm using vinyl homemade piping, I'm going to need to put some little clips in here to help that piping ease its way around all the corners, and you'll have to do that along most of the corners. If you're using pre-made piping, you may have to do the same thing. It just helps make a straight piece into a curvy piece, and it helps spread that fabric out. So go ahead and do that all the way around until we get to the other side of the bottom. Now that we're coming along the bottom, you kind of want these to overlap by that 1 inch at that center point again. So bring that side all the way around, and I'm going to place a mark with my erasable pen on this part of the cording, right where my cording stops of the other one where we had cut it out, which is right at that center mark. And I'm drawing out another inch away. So I can go ahead and I can trim my cording off at that 1 inch mark and then cut away that 5/8 of an inch or so of cording on that end. And once again, this is to reduce the bulk and not have to sew over that cording in hopes that we will not be breaking a needle. So go ahead and cut that cording away just like we did with before. And then what we're going to be doing is, I need to cut away a little bit more. Didn't quite get enough. So you will have where we cut off the cording will kind of match up, and then we'll be veering those two ends kind of down and out of the way. Like so. So that one underneath, and then this top one kind of forming an X right at that bottom center mark. And then we're going to go ahead. It's a little bit awkward here, mainly because I was using a really thick vinyl, which made doing piping on this so incredibly hard with binding. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and we are going to sew all the way around here with an 1/2 inch seam allowance. So our zipper foot, once again, is going to be kind of going nice and snug right up our piping cord all the way around. And you will do the exact same thing on the opposite side. Okay, so that is all done. You can go ahead and trim off these little tails from where we veered them off. And this is what that looks like. Okay, so the tough part. So this was tough because I used vinyl, very thick vinyl for my piping. So we want to put these wrong sides together with the main panels that we put together, match up those centers, and you can see how thick it is here for me. Good thing I'm on an industrial machine, because using the materials I use, this would have been really hard. So the quarter section on that side will line up perfectly with the overlay on our main panels. So use the overlay on the main panels as your quarter section mark on the main panels. And then your top center will be the top center that we have notched in the side, and then line it up with the middle of our zipper tab. And then go ahead and evenly distribute the fabric in between those 4 quarter marks. Now down here, you may find that it doesn't want to go around that corner. You can put little 1/4 inch notches into the main panels to help ease the fabric around those bottom curves. Not the side panels, but you can do little notches around the main panel, about 1/4 inch, 1/8 to 1/4 inch or so, just to help ease it around that corner. Now we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to sew it in place with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow that stitching from when we sewed the piping on, so I know I'm not running over top of the piping by accident and getting it caught in the seam. Again, I found this really tough, not because it was hard, but because I used a very thick vinyl and made my layers very, very thick with that piping in here. One thing with piping and binding, sometimes they're a little hard to do together, but I did manage to do it and it was good. I think my next bag though, I will be leaving the piping out of this part, or I will use pre-made cotton piping. Once you've done this with both sides, this is what that looks like. Just kind of, well, this is one side done. Kind of go in and feel, make sure everything was caught, nothing is hanging out, and then go ahead and bind the side with whatever your binding preference is. If you need a bias binding class, that is down below in the description in the Bagmakers playlist. Once you have both sides bound, go ahead and turn the bag right side out. Now, as you can see, this wasn't too bad to turn it all. Push out all of your binding. That helps give it really great structure. Push out all of those seams. Massage everything into place. Make sure everything looks good, everything was caught, and then all you have left to do really is put on those handles. Here she is, all done. Look how pretty she turned out, even with the effort of that piping and the binding. I think it was worth it. Yeah, admire your work. Give yourself a pat on the back. And then we're done.
All right, that's it. That's all. What did you think of that binding finish? I love binding. I used to not like binding, but over the last year and a half or so, I have learned to really, really appreciate binding, especially when I want to make these bags that have the zipper top drop-in lining. It's a Brandy thing. I just cannot do them. They are my kryptonite. I need to practice more. I would rather bind a bag than do a zipper top drop-in lining. So I think it worked out really good. It was very, very little modifications to the pattern pieces. As I said, I just had to take 1/8 of an inch off of the height of the main panels and then do the zippers with zipper tabs. So it was pretty easy, I thought. Anyways, I would love to see your Blanches. If you would like to put them on my bagmakers group, you can definitely do that. That link is down below. That's my Facebook bagmakers group. We did make this bag in the February Tuesday classes of 2023. So if you need a slowed down version, you can always go ahead and do that. Just join the membership and you can watch the replays of that class if you needed a slowed down version of the Tuesday classes. And besides that, if you did like this video, please do give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. If you'd like to support my channel further, you can definitely buy me a coffee. All of that is linked down below. And again, check out my membership side. Maybe there's something there that you would like to see as well. Anyways, until the next one, bye.